Okay, we're here broadcasting live again from Mexico City and from San Diego, California. We have this is the third episode or edition of the Dojo Live, and today, uh, and hold on one second. Okay, there you go. And today we have our featured guest speaker is Jorge Olson. Jorge is, well, he's a very well-known businessman in both in the speaking and the technology arenas. And although I'm going to let Jorge introduce himself more in detail, but I'd like to mention that Jorge is currently he's in charge of venture capital for Bitbox, and also he's in also with Funding Mexico and Bitbox Mexico, and also. Jorge was kind enough to send me his bio, and he's also labels himself as an influence and branding expert. So anyway, there's a whole bunch of things that I could probably mention about Jorge, but I let Jorge do the talking. I guess that he's better qualified to do this than I am. So Jorge, by all means, feel free to introduce yourself to our audience. And welcome to your first engagement with the dojo. Jorge, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome everybody. My name is Jorge Olson, and today we're going to talk about a lot of things, but the primary subject that we'll touch on is how to fund Mexican technology companies in the U.S. and the difference between funding in the U.S. and Mexico. We will talk on society, we will talk on technology and other interesting subjects in the technology world. You can ask questions with your chat at any time, and Carlos will be nice enough to send me the questions. Maybe I can see them. If I can see them, I will answer them live. You don't have to wait for your written questions till the end of our chat. You can do it as we speak. If something is not clear or you have a great, incredible idea or question. Again, my name is Jorge Olson. And I'll tell you a little bit about me so that we can start by knowing each other. I was born in Mexico. I was born in Tijuana, the safest city in the world, especially back then when I grew up.
Is that so?
Yeah, it is. And I studied in the U.S., my university. I went to Europe, and my first job was as a software consultant for an ERP company throughout Europe, and I spent some time there until I came back to the U.S. as CEO of U.S. operations. I've spent some time in technology and consumer goods as well as other different projects at a C-level, and I've been an entrepreneur, you could say a serial entrepreneur, for the past 12 years. I'm also an author. I have 4 books, including The Unselfish Guide to Self-Promotion, Successonomics, Build Your Beverage Empire, Spend Apart, and I'm working on 2 books that will be released this year. I'm also a fiction writer, and I'm working on my first novel. Now, let's talk about some of the projects that I'm working on because they will be pertinent to the talk. We're going to talk about funding, getting investment into companies, and I've been doing investments and mergers and acquisitions for, the first one I did was 10 years ago, and I've been doing it for about 10 years, mostly in the U.S. and Mexico, some Europe and some Canada, but mostly U.S. and Mexico. There's some things that are important to mention, like culture, and we'll go over the culture of investors in the U.S., the culture of investors in Mexico. But let's start with some of the projects that I'm working on so you can get an idea of technology in the border. I'm working on one project which is called Bitbox. Bitbox is Redbox in Mexico. Redbox is a $2 billion, with a B, billion-dollar company in the United States, publicly traded company. And now we are bringing it to Mexico. If you live in the border area in Mexico, you will be able to see it because we already launched there. We have about 100 machines so far in the border area. And we have 300,000 rentals so far, about 20,000 customers. That's one. That's one of the projects, or of the more interesting projects. The other one is also a very popular and famous project because it was launched by somebody from Tijuana. His name is Jordi Munoz. I'm sure a lot of you already know about him. And it's a drone company. He is the co-founder of 3D Robotics. And 3D Robotics is doing a spin-off. And Jordi will stay in the Tijuana, San Diego area with the new spin-off, and he will head this new company called Mayan Robotics. Mayan is the culture, the Maya culture, Mayan Robotics. And that's another one of the projects that I have. I'm advisor to both companies, and I'm helping to raise capital for both companies. A little background, 3D Robotics already raised $110 million in capital. And BitBox already raised $4.5 million in capital. We're doing another raise for them for $6 million and a raise of $5 million for Mayan Robotics. Now, why are we involved with funding, and how does one get funding for their company, especially for technology companies? Funding for technology companies is very different than other types of companies because the valuations are very different. What's a valuation? Valuation is how much your company is worth. How much your company is worth, not to you, but to the investors, to people who are willing to put money in your company. By the way, if you're wondering, yes, my office is in the clouds. This is why you see the background here. Of clouds.
There
And
you go.
yes, we have some clouds in San Diego, California, even if you don't believe it. It was raining today and yesterday, but it's still 80 degrees, so everything is good in paradise.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
funding of technology companies it's different because you get higher valuations. Your company is worth more. Your company is worth much more than, let's say, a distribution company or a services company, because technology is sexy and because technology has intellectual property. Intellectual property raises the valuation, or what you get for your company. But let's jump to the good part. The good part is, how do you position your company and the different mentalities of funding around the world, especially in Mexico and in the US. Let's start with Mexico. And by the way, I give this chat in Mexico quite often, and I speak on only one side. And then I go and I speak to investment bankers, VCs, venture capitalists, and other people, mostly in California and New York in the US, and I tell them another part of the chat. Today you will hear both sides of the chat, what we tell the Americans and what we tell the Mexicans. Now, what is it that we tell the Americans? To the Americans, we explain the Mexican mentality towards investment. Let's talk about investment in Mexico. Why don't you have hundreds of venture capital firms in Mexico? Why don't you have hundreds of investment bankers in Mexico, or even angel investors? You do have a couple of angel investment groups in Mexico. I belong to them. As a matter of fact, they have a magazine, and I will be on the cover of the next magazine, and I have a full-page article for Angel Ventures. So check it out if you subscribe. If not, it's free, so you should subscribe to Angel Ventures. And how does the Mexicans approach investment? Well, let's start with the story. You have an entrepreneur, and the entrepreneur maybe started their company from scratch. It's not normal in Mexico, but follow me for this example. They started their company from scratch, first generation, and they grew it slowly. They grew it to, maybe this is a supermarket, or this is another type of brick and mortar company. They started it when they were young and they grew. They opened another location, so now they have 2 stores, then 3 stores, 4 stores. They started making money. Then they took a partner, and the second generation started working in their company, and they started becoming really profitable. Now they have 20 or 30 stores. They have quite a bit of money, and the third generation is already started in the business, and they will milk it. The they will probably leave the business to the second generation, and then the new third generation will start working in the company. When they start having extra capital, they will open more supermarkets, they will hire more of their family, and they will buy real estate, not stocks, not bonds, not investing in other companies. They will buy real estate. They will not quit their job. They will not resign. They will still be on the board of directors or very, very active running their company. This is a typical Mexican entrepreneur. What type of real estate will they invest in? Well, land. They will invest in land. They will invest in maybe some income property, rentals. And for sure, if they are very successful, they will invest in industrial parks, right? Industrial parks, so they can rent big, big properties. So that's a typical investor, and let's go back to that in a second. But before we go back to it, let's talk about investment into Mexico. Who is investing in Mexico? Our entrepreneur is investing in Mexico in his or her own business. That's the way they are investing in Mexico. They're not investing in other companies. They're investing in their own business. That's one type of investment. Now, let's talk about foreign investment. Foreign investment comes into Mexico mostly in banking, in the maquiladora industry, and other types of manufacturing. What happens then? Well, they hire a lot of people. They hire a lot of workers, not entrepreneurs, a few developers, a few engineers, but mostly workers, blue-collar workers, line workers, production workers. So it is good and it is bad. Now, why is it both good and bad? The good part is they are employing multiple people. A maquiladora can have 100 employees. It can have 1,000 or 5,000 employees. So from that type of employment, it is a good thing. Now, why is it not such a good thing? Because they continue giving the country a mentality of line workers, of non-thinking employment, non-service employment, of yes sir, top-down employment instead of collaboration, thinking, creating, which is how you build economies and how you build wealth. That's why it's not so good. It's better to hire programmers or engineers than line workers or production workers. This is why they're living these other countries, so they can educate their new employees into new industries and progress. And the old industrial revolution jobs are going to places like Mexico. That's why it's not so good. But anyway, we have a lot of investment from Sony, Panasonic, Mitsubishi, Toyota, Ford, and a lot of foreign companies that come to Mexico. You have a lot of banking also that comes into Mexico. About $1 billion per day of products go into Mexico just from the U.S. alone. That's $1 billion a day with a B. So these are exports. These are products that are being exported to Mexico through trucks. It does not include, let's say, Coca-Cola Mexico or Procter & Gamble Mexico and what they produce and export in net profit to the U.S. and other countries. We're just talking about trucks that cross the border. It's about $1 billion a day as we speak. That's the type of investment that goes into Mexico. This type of investment doesn't invest in small business. Small business drives every culture. Every first world culture in the globe is driven by small businesses, and none of these goes to small businesses, and that's part of the problem. Now, let's talk about a typical entrepreneur in the U.S. We touched on a typical entrepreneur in Mexico. Let's touch on one for the U.S. How are they different? Well, same scenario. You have an entrepreneur in the U.S. They make some money. more it's more likely in the US that they will not involve their kids in the business. In Mexico, it is very likely that their kids will go into the business, not in Mexico, not in the US. Mexico, yes, US, no. Their kids will go and study someplace, something else. They will go to the university and then pursue whatever career they want. They will be writers, they will be lawyers, they will be doctors, they will be musicians or whatever they want. So in the US, the second generation is lost in most businesses. So then the first generation tends to sell their businesses if they are successful in the business. And then they go and they start another business. So in the US, you see a lot of serial entrepreneurs. Doesn't mean they invest in serial companies. It means they invest in multiple companies, one after the other, after the other, after the other. They love being in business and they love starting. Maybe not so much running, but starting new businesses, exploring new opportunities. And then if they are successful, they sell it as well. If they are mega ultra successful, maybe they take it public to Wall Street so they can start trading if they are mega successful. If not, they'll sell it. Once they sell their companies and they have some money, they will probably start another company and start investing in new companies. Now, this is especially the rule in technology companies. If a technology company sells, if the entrepreneur sells, it is almost 100% sure that that person will become an angel investor and a mentor. And a key word here is mentor. They will mentor other entrepreneurs. They will invest their time and their money in other entrepreneurs. What we're doing today is one type of mentoring. I do mentoring. I do it as we are doing it today. I do it one-on-one as well here in San Diego and across the world as well. And entrepreneurs that sold their technology company tend to do the same. Especially in California, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, San Diego, Orange County. But it happens all over the world. So they're investing constantly in the next generation, constantly in new technology, growing new technology. But not only that, mentoring, telling the young entrepreneur what they did right and what they did wrong, introducing them to the right people, to the people who know what they're doing, to people who can help them, influence them, get them clients, and do many other things that they need, especially if they're young. If they're young, they want to tell them what to do, what not to do, and lessons learned. That's a big feature of the culture, the investment culture, the technology entrepreneurship culture in the US. The other big thing is failure. Not being afraid of failure. As a matter of fact, in Silicon Valley, there's a saying, fail often and fail young. So they encourage failure. They want you to go out, risk, fail, and try again. That's important. Fail and try again. That's very embedded into the investment culture, especially in California. In Mexico, not so much. In Mexico, they tell you, you better not fail. You better not lose my money if you get an investor. Let's talk about another thing, a third thing that's very important in investment, and that is what type of equity do you get in the companies? The type of equity that you get in Mexican companies from Mexican investors is usually partnership. The type that you get in the US is typically no partnership, just investment. Let's talk about both. In Mexico, if you get an investor, you probably get a partner. Somebody that's going to show up the next morning, sit next to you and tell you what to do and say, hey, partner, what are we going to do next? They are part of your company. And I've had people that I mentor in Mexico that are hugely successful. They've taken companies public, hundreds of millions of dollars in sales. and their investor slash partner fires them. Yes, their investor fires them. So yes, they still own some stock in the company, but they don't control their company. And that's typical in Mexico. In the US, there's a saying, I already worked, I have the money, I don't need to work, you need to work. And I think that's a big difference. In the US, people that give you money or invest in you don't expect to work. They expect you to work for the money and make the money. That's another very big difference into the mind of investors. Now let's go back to the Mexican investor. The Mexican investor already has their capital. They are rich and they're investing in land. Now, why are they investing in land, and why now are a lot of them investing in land? Because of the maquiladoras. So we go back to the maquiladoras and the example on maquiladoras, and that's one of the big reasons that the new investment goes into hard assets, which are mostly land, because now you can rent it for a lot of money to these foreign entities that come and establish manufacturing plants. So now we're talking that they're making huge amounts of money with very little risk, because they're backed by hard assets. The hard assets are in real estate. So you go, or an entrepreneur goes to an investor in Mexico, and you say, I want you to invest in my company. I need $250,000 of seed capital, and later on I will be asking for $1 million. And I will give you a percentage of the company. And they will probably tell you, why should I give you $250,000 where I don't control the company? I have no say in what you're doing, where I can invest it in that piece of land that I can rent to Sony for $20,000 per month, guaranteed, with a 12-year contract. That's the argument. That's why we don't get a lot of investment in Mexico in entrepreneurship, in technology, and other types of companies. In the US, the mentality is completely different. The mentality is, I already have some land, I already have some real estate, but the money that I am investing in you can grow 10x, can multiply times 10. So if I invest $250,000, I can get $2.5 million back. And that's a terrific deal. They like risk, or they see their portfolio as a way to mitigate risk, where they can invest in 5 or 10 companies, and they know 2 are going to fail the first year and go bankrupt. Some are going to be a little bit successful, and then 3 are going to be an exit. They're going to have an exit strategy where they will make 5 or 10 times their money. And one of them will pay for the investment in their entire portfolio. The second one will be pure profit. And that's the difference between investment in the US and Mexico. That's the difference a little bit about the culture and how the investors themselves see Mexico and the US. Now, when I go, I spoke this year at the Harvard Club in New York, and it was a room filled with investment bankers and fund managers. And the questions about Mexico are very interesting. The questions about Mexico are about education. Does Mexico have higher levels of education? Can they produce engineers? Can they produce programmers? Can they produce people who can run technology companies? These are the type of questions that we have in the US. We also have questions about security. Are they going to kidnap me if I go to Mexico? Do they, for VidBox, for example, they ask, do they have credit cards and debit cards in Mexico? Can they rent movies? Of course, after 300,000 rentals, that question is easily answered. But those are the type of questions that I get from the US into Mexico. The type of questions that I get in Mexico about the US are, why would an American invest in a Mexican company? Those are the type of questions that I get in Mexico. And I think that I get those questions because they are insecure about themselves, about the companies, about the projects. And the reason is very simple, because they're entrepreneurs and they're investors. And if they see a good deal, it doesn't matter if you're in Mexico, in China, or in Mars. They're going to invest. If it's a good value, if you have users, if you're making money even, anybody would invest, let alone Americans, Germans, French, anybody would invest. But those are some of the questions that I get from both sides of the border. So that's investment. And what I want to do now is, we have quite a few people on the line. I want to open it up for questions. You can ask questions about anything that you want. You can ask questions about me if you want to, or what I do. You can ask questions about the projects that I'm working on, VidBots or Mayan Robotics, or about investment from any of the parties that I mentioned, or about the public type of investment, because another thing that we do, that it's too much information for this chat, but we also take companies public from the US and from Mexico. What that means is we take them from private so they can be on Wall Street in the US. We don't take them public in Mexico. We only take them public in the US. And yes, we take Mexican companies public as well in the US. So not in Mexico, but in the US, so they can trade in the US stock markets. So any questions that you have about investment, about technology, about the projects that I'm working on, or anything in between, please feel free to ask them throughout with the chat. Carlos, you're on.
Absolutely. And well, first of all, thank you, Jorge, for all your insights and the valuable information you're sharing. And now I'd like to encourage my team here to, just like Jorge said, to ask away. And your excuse me, you can either do it here on the Q&As. You should be able to see. I already explained to Matt how this works, but you should be able to see the Q&A window right there on YouTube. And if not, you can always Skype me. So either way, just like we did last time, and I'll share your questions with Jorge, and basically take it from there. So let's see. I don't know. It's let's just no questions, anybody?
Well, I have a question here. What Mexican funds do you think are doing a good job funding new tech companies?
Oh yeah, there it is. You can see it now. Good, thank you. Appreciate it.
No, I don't think they're doing a good job. I've worked with Angel Ventures, and I think they're doing a good job. They already committed, I believe, $20 million to tech companies in Mexico. So I think that's an incredible amount. It's a good start, let's say. It's a good start. So Angel Ventures did a nice job, and they have a very good start in doing so. They're also mentoring, which I think it's phenomenal. I already mentored 2 of their executives in the border region, and through social media and other means, I'm mentoring many more. And after this chat, my name is it's not very common, so you will be able to find me on Twitter as Jorge Olson, and my Facebook public page and other places, and I respond almost every day. So if you have any questions today, in a year, in a month, in 5 years, I will still be here answering questions. I've done it for the past 10 years, and I will continue doing it. Questions about funding or anything else. I think we need more funds. I think we need many more funds in Mexico. I think we need also to educate Silicon Valley on what great talent we have in Mexico. I think we need to educate Wall Street on the talent that we have in Mexico. So far, I am one of 2 or 3 people in the entire country in the US who are actively educating US investors in investing in Mexico, even funds. I sit down with the ex-CEO of Merrill Lynch Latin America about deal flow in Mexico, and he said, I don't have any. How can this be that you don't have any deal flow in Mexico? I can get you 10 companies in 30 days. Well, we don't have them. It's either because the Mexican companies don't know, it's maybe because of insecurities that they don't think the Americans would invest, or they think the Americans will steal their company, which they will not. That's not the style of investing that the U.S. has. So that's the answer on funds. If you want me to look at funds and speak with fund managers, I will. Just send me the fund name or the contact name, and I will call them up and chat with them or invite them over to San Diego to our incubator. We have quite a large incubator here in San Diego, California, for companies. Our companies sell more than $100 million, so it's not a small incubator. It's a decent size incubator where we have different companies that operate in Mexico, not just in the U.S., but mostly in Mexico, and we incubate them at in the border region. So anybody who finds themselves in San Diego, California, even across the border in Tijuana, give me a call, and I'll be happy to give you a tour.
There you go. I think I will. I mean, I'm not in the investing part of this of the game, but give you a call and maybe we can go have coffee at Horton Plaza or something. All right. I have a couple of questions here. The first one is from Roberto Martinez, and the company's CEO, and he says he's wondering what funds and what stages you invest in, and is there any good exit in the last 5 years in Mexico?
Yes, a lot of good exits, a lot of companies that are going public and are selling in Mexico, a lot of them. Some of them are going public in Mexico. Some of them are just being sold. And they're being sold every day, not just in the past 5 years, but every single day. It's just that we don't find out because the culture is not such. There's no deal flow magazine. There's no deal flow newsletter like in the U.S. Every day I get 10, 20 companies from the U.S. that sold or went public. There's no such thing in Mexico. But yes, there's companies selling, there's companies getting investment, and there's companies going public every day by themselves or through a fund in Mexico. Now, the funds in Mexico have a very different style of investing. There's some new funds that are up and comers that are US style funds, but the traditional funds in Mexico will buy your company or will take control of your company. I don't work with them. I only work with US investors, funding companies. Well, I have a few people that I work with in Mexico, but they have the new type of mentality. And in the US, I work for technology, mostly with venture capitalists from California, Silicon Valley, San Francisco, San Diego, angel investors as well from those places. For non-technology companies, I typically work with investors from New York. And that's for companies that want to go public in the US that are Mexican.
Okay. Thank you, Jorge. Roberto, does that answer your question? I think if you have anything else, Roberto, please let us know. And also, we have another question by Fausto Guerrero. He's in Hermosillo, by the way. He's our inside sales and analytics guru at the company. So he's wondering if you had $10 million to invest in Mexico, where or in what would you invest?
$10 million in Mexico. Well, there's a few places that you can invest $10 million in Mexico. There's deregulation right now happening in Mexico for oil and gas, and that's an incredible space to be the first to market in Mexico. Because if you go to the U.S. now, by the way, one of our strategies of investing in Mexico is we take what works in other countries that it's ahead of its time, and then we take it to Mexico. So no brain surgery. VidBox works in the US as Redbox, $2 billion. So we take it to Mexico. Easy, right? So that's a lot of the strategies that we use. We don't reinvent a lot of things or invent a lot of things. We take what's working. One of the things that's working in the US is franchising gas stations. In Mexico, the gas station on the corner, it's called Pemex. And the second corner, it's called Pemex. And the third corner, it's called Pemex. And that's going to change through deregulation. So you will have the opportunity to have different brands of gas stations in Mexico. Whoever is first to market, it's going to rule the world in that. So that's one of the things that I would invest. Another thing that I would invest is medical tourism and technology that's ticking behind medical tourism. Now, what is medical tourism? By the way, it's not just for the border. Guadalajara is big in medical tourism. Puerto Vallarta, Cancun are huge on medical tourism, and of course, the border region is as well. These are Americans or Europeans or Canadians that want to go to Mexico for their doctors. Simple example. Maybe somebody from San Diego wants to go to the dentist in Tijuana. It's very simple. They can walk across the border. They can taxi, Uber, or walk to a dentist. They spend $100, $200, and that's it. That's a simple way of looking at medical tourism. It happens every day to the tune of billions of dollars with a B, but it is segmented. What does that mean? It means there's no companies actually helping to do this. There's a bunch of dentists, a bunch of doctors, surgeons running all over the place trying to get one or two customers. No entrepreneur. Well, there's a few. I've sat down with two entrepreneurs so far from Mexico, one from Mexico City, one from Tijuana, are doing directories of doctors. But that's, I think, a small play. A directory play is a small play. I can do a directory, right? I can go to WordPress, put in some plugins, do a directory, and boom, I'm in business. No, I think there's a larger play. There's a larger play where you can do much more and turn it into a $50, $100 million valuation. If you can maybe get a certification for the doctors. So you actually go to their office, you look at their diploma from UNAM or UABC or whatever, look at their diploma and you say, yes, this is a doctor. I checked their office. It's clean. I met the receptionist and they speak English and the doctor is very nice. And I spoke with 5 patients. So they are certified by my company to be good doctors. That sort of play, I think, can be incredibly big as a technology play married to a brick and mortar business, which is doctors. Medical tourism. Write it down. Medical tourism. If anybody's looking for a project, they should jump into medical tourism. In Mexico, the deregulation is very big. Also, the deregulation allows now for foreign companies to invest in wind power and solar power, and that is going to be huge in Mexico. I already went through about 3 deals that came to me for solar. I turned them down myself because it's not my specialty. But people are with a lot of money are already looking for solar and wind power. So they look for land, they look for partners, they look for different things in Mexico. By the way, everything that I do in Mexico is without the government. And a lot of people come to me from the US and say, well, my friend knows a guy. My friend knows the president. My friend knows the governor. My friend is really connected. My friend knows somebody in Oxo. Well, no. We have contracts, and I've sold personally to every single supermarket in the US and in Mexico. Every single convenience store in the US and in Mexico. I've had my own distribution companies in both countries. I don't know anybody. I'm not connected. I don't know the governor, the president, or their cousin. I do it the old-fashioned way. I get up real early and work all day, and I do everything to the letter of the law, both in the US and Mexico, and it's always worked for me. I don't skip anything. I don't take shortcuts. I don't get bribes. Everything I do by the letter of the law in any country. And I would recommend the same thing, and it always works. For some of these contracts, you do need to involve the government, like solar and other type of energy, and that's why I turned it down, because I cannot do it on my own. Medical tourism you can do on your own. So you could start there. And something very interesting, in Mexico, you can take American insurance. So a lot of doctors, especially dentists, what they do is they get the maximum on the first visit, which is about $1,500. So you get the US patient that comes in, and you know they can spend $1,500 off the bat. So you can run their insurance for $1,500 and then continue doing the services throughout the year that they need for their dental work. Imagine getting all the money at once from a patient for the next 12 months. That's an incredible deal for an incredible patient. That's the lifetime value of that patient can be $3,000 or $4,000, $5,000. That's huge. You can spend $1,000 to acquire that client and still make out like a bandit. Now, that's one. Imagine having 100 or 100,000 patients. If somebody can figure out how to do it for a lot of doctors and a lot of people.
That's a business idea.
Probably invested in that.
Yeah. Well, there you have it. That's a good business idea for you, for all you entrepreneurs or out there. So anyway, okay, let's see. Fausto, I hope that answers your question. So is there anybody else, any more questions that you would like to ask Jorge while we're here? And okay, I would like to personally just briefly just comment or ask something. It's really not a question. It's just like out of curiosity. And this is because I've heard a little bit about this. What's your connection with Jordi? So would you mind explaining to us a little bit and how you have made things work?
Sure.
Thank you.
It's a very interesting story, and if anybody's looking for inspiration from entrepreneurs, you should read his story. And you should also read my story. I haven't told it here, but it's in several of my books. But Jordi is very famous. He's a celebrity in Mexico and in the US. He is the founder of 3D Robotics, one of the sexiest companies in the US and actually in the world. And it's drones. It's a drone company. He's from Tijuana. He was born in Ensenada and grew up in Tijuana, like I did. And he invented a stabilizer and autopilot for drones. He was discovered, and they funded his company. He partnered up with an entrepreneur from the US, which happened to be the editor of a very famous magazine called Wired magazine. So he quit his job, came to Tijuana to partner with Jordi, and raised a bunch of money. Now, before they raised the money, Jordi was already doing about $10 million in sales, by the way. He was 20 years old.
Whoa.
And what he did is he hacked his Nintendo, his dad's phone, and he created this autopilot, hardware and software. And then he started selling it online. You know, 1, then 2, then 5, then 10. He realized that people were buying it. So you don't need a lot of money to do it. He started with $250 in components. $250 in components. He put together his own hardware, motherboard. He created the motherboard, so he put together the motherboard. He baked it in his microwave oven. He didn't have a professional oven. He baked it in his microwave oven, and he started selling the autopilots to people who like drones and were building drones in their garages, or university professors, engineers that wanted to test autopilots for drones. That was his market. And that's the way he started. They have raised so far $110 million through 3D Robotics. And they're doing a spin-off. Now, by the way, the manufacturing of 3D robotics is done in Tijuana. And one of the partners that people do not know is Guillermo. Guillermo is actually a co-founder also of 3D Robotics, and he is one of his junior high school buddies. So they were friends. Jordi and Guillermo were friends when they were, junior high is 13 years old. Guillermo is an engineer, and he runs all of the manufacturing for 3D robotics out of Tijuana. Now, things happen in different ways, but Guillermo went to one of my chats, a live chat. Just like this one, I talked about the same thing, but live. This was held in Tijuana at Copermex, at one of their meetings. And afterwards, he approached me and said, I have a project. I need to do a spin-off of 3D robotics. I'm a fan of 3D robotics, so I said, let's work together. And we started working together on the spin-off. And that's the way I met both of them. And I'm an advisor to the company. And I'm handling the spin-off. What does that mean? It means that I am negotiating with 3D robotics to buy a spin-off, which is 150 employees are included in the spin-off, as well as some background when we started. God was there. So we're negotiating the buy of research and development, the procurement of all of the research and development of robotics, enterprise business from 3D robotics, and the entire facility and manufacturing of 150 employees. It includes $20 million in sales that they're doing out of that facility with an online store. Jordi and Guillermo will be the co-founders. I'm handling marketing for them as well. Very exciting. The sexiest project in Mexico, and I'm very happy to be involved with it.
Hey, there you go. That's your answer right there. All right. Seems like a couple of our people here still have a little problem finding the Q&A section. But anyway, I'll be more than happy to read it to you from Skype. We have another question from one of our guys here, Cuauhtemoc. He's asking, do problems in Mexico, for example, like violence, piracy, or corruption, discourage U.S. investors? I think you briefly mentioned something like, well, they ask about it, but I'll let you do the talking. So that's his question. Thank you, Cuauhtemoc.
Yes, and it's mostly the media. Not just the violence and corruption, but the media. The media in the U.S. only focuses on what's bad in Mexico, and they issue warnings. Don't go to Mexico. Don't visit Mexico. Don't do anything that has to do with Mexicans or Mexico, and that is pretty bad for all of us. So yes, it happens, and it happens every day. From the corruption side, yes. A lot of people, especially people who are investing in Mexico, say, but what about the corruption? Well, we don't care. What do you mean you don't care? Yeah, we don't pay bribes, but we don't really care. What if people want to do something to you? We have lawyers. That's it.
So what you're saying is,
corruption doesn't really affect us in our business, in what we do in our business, because we always follow the letter of the law. So if somebody wants to do something bad to us, to take over a business or to do something, they can't, because we have good lawyers and we find judges that are good judges, and we've never had a problem. Doesn't mean they haven't tried. It just means that we've always won. But the real problem is the media in the U.S. focusing on all of the violence and everything that happens in Mexico. There's violence everywhere in the world. If you go to Detroit, you will find more violence than in Mexico City. And you don't see people saying don't buy U.S. cars or don't invest in Ford because Detroit is dangerous. You never hear about it. If you go to Detroit, you're going to be scared. So yes, it has a lot to do with it. we have to be very sensitive in public relations and investor relations of what goes on in Mexico. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you again. Cuauhtemoc, that was your answer. And I appreciate it again. Okay. And we still have a couple of minutes more left in case anyone has any more questions. Now's the time for we run out of time, and so please, by all means, let me know either here on the Q&A section or on Skype. And let's see, we have one more from Roberto Martinez. And he says, what is the mindset about short-term versus long-term investment? So that's his question. I don't know if he's talking about the mindset in the US or in Mexico. Roberto, you can elaborate or clarify. That'll be great. But that's his question, Jorge.
I'll touch on both.
Okay.
Short and long-term investment means very different things for different people in different cultures. In Japan, maybe 50 years.
Oh, he says in Mexico. That's he said. That's he says. Okay.
In Japan, they have a very long-term mentality, which is awesome. They're thinking 50 years, and they're thinking the good of the country and the good of everybody. In Mexico, you might think 3-5 years. A good exit strategy. If you're speaking with investors in any country, you don't want to tell them you're gonna leave this business to your children, otherwise they will not invest. In most countries, especially in Mexico, and in the US as well, you need to have a clear exit strategy. You need to tell them how they're going to make their money. You can either tell them you're going to make a percentage of sales or of net revenue, or what I prefer is we're going to sell the company, and you're going to get the money when we sell the company. You're going to sell the company in 5 years. And I think that's the best answer, and that's a medium, not a long or short, but a medium strategy or a medium exit strategy. 10 years is too long. Nobody's going to wait 10 years for you to sell the company. Now, you don't have to put it in writing that you absolutely positively need to sell in 10 years, but it needs to be part of your selling proposition to investors. 5 years is what I recommend. The strategy that produces 5 years internally.
All right. Hey, thank you, Jorge, again. Well, I guess we're about to wrap up. So we still might have room for one more question, if at all. And just so give it some thought, people. And if not, then I'd like to get ready for our exit strategy for today's session. Okay. And Jorge, on behalf of myself and my team and my colleagues and my friends here, I want to thank you so deeply. And also, as you probably know, this is going to be available. This chat is going to be available on YouTube and also on the Dojo page, which I think I shared the link. It's all going to be there. You can use it at your convenience. You can share it or reference it. There are other talks that we've recorded, and they're there, so they might be of interest to you as well. And that's at least on my end right now. That's pretty much it. Jorge, you and I are connected, so if you can just send me a postal address, and we'll be more than happy to send you some tokens of our appreciation for having shared your expertise and your knowledge in these sessions, in this on-air session. And that's pretty much it. Jorge, if you had a couple of last words for our audience here, in terms of the main subject of the day, what would it be? Knowing that we're a technology company, that we're, as I explained to you yesterday, we're in the softwares. We have software as a service clients and consumer-facing sites, and we do engineering. What type of advice would you give us in terms of investment?
Get users.
Okay, we're working on it.
Don't just code. When I worked in Germany, they used to have a saying, it's hard to make, it should be hard to use. Make it easy. But no, the real advice is get users. For whatever you do, get users.
Okay.
If you can, get users first and code second. Users is very important. Sell it first, get users. Case in point, I have a pet project for authors. I have 100,000 authors, and it's called PromoCave. You can check it out at promocave.com.
Right.
This is a site for authors, people who write books. I had 100,000 people before I had anything. Not even a website.
There you go.
So it's very important to have users.
Well, I think we could use some of that. We could definitely use some of that since we're working on our own stuff here. We'll keep you posted on that, Jorge. Well, I think it's about time to wrap it up. And Jorge, again, thank you so much. You and I are going to be in touch, and that's pretty much it for the day. And look forward to having you again at some point in the future with a different talk, with a different subject.
Everybody, thank you very much. I know your time is valuable, and I am very happy that you decided to spend it with me. Bye for now.
It's the other way around. Okay, so thank you, Jorge. We'll be in touch. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.